All right, so here we are with the lecture on perception. As you can see on the board, there's a description of what perception is, starting with how it actually, instead of going sideways, I'm going to define it with the process that goes that word, because perception actually can be described as a process where we select, organize, store, and interpret information that comes to us from the environment to help us create a picture of the world around us. Perception is subjective and creative. In perception, we often say that we don't see the world as it is, but as we are. Perception basically means that, and you probably knew this already, that everyone has a different way to look at the world and how we experience it. Have you ever heard how people sometimes say that my reality is my perception? Because based on how you experience how you grew up, then you tend to see the world that way, right? If you grew up really poor or very wealthy, then how do you see the world? Obviously different. The reason I have this diagram here is because this is an attempt to show you how you experience reality, and the arrows represent the information that you're presented with on a daily basis. But our brain, as you're going through your daily life and receiving those experiences about what you're being exposed to, not everything that you're being exposed to, not all the information makes it through. We happen to have a filter in our brain that blocks certain aspects of what we don't like or what we don't care for or what is irrelevant to us, and we only let sit through what is important to us. So think of this filter the same as with how you make coffee or tea, where you have the filter, you grind the coffee, you put the grounds, you add the water, it sips over, and you end up with the essence of the tea or the coffee, and that's what you wanted, so you drink it. What happens to what you did not want that stayed in the filter? We get rid of that. And that's what we do with the information that we don't find. We catch it on the filter and we get rid of it. That becomes what, so from this reality that we are all exposed to right now, we only pick and choose what we want to see. When we select, we don't see the world as it is, but as we are, because I'm only going to see what is relevant and important to me, not everything that I'm being exposed to. When we organize, we place information into patterns in our brain, because as human beings, we have that urgency to collect all the information and put it into neat little packages that make sense to us. And it may be different for everybody how you do that, but that's the attempt. Then we also have how we how we store the information. We have to store the information so that we can later on bring it back and interpret what we have been exposed to. And this is in the form of memories that we go back and think about what we have experienced before so that we can make decisions. The idea about when talking about perception is obviously that we all experience the world in different ways, and it's interesting because you have to compare with what you're able to see versus what I'm able to see. Have you seen pictures online with, say, subliminal messages where they show you the image and there's supposed to be two items in there? So half of the audience will see one but not the other. For example, you have seen the famous diagram with the two faces looking at each other, but it turns out that it's also like a glass or a cup or a vase. And so there are a lot of different diagrams that you can look for where people would see one but not the other. You can also think about how oftentimes people say that or they will ask you, are you the kind of person that sees the glass half full or half empty? What does that mean? I'm actually not sure about what that means, other than because there are a lot of implications with it. But so supposedly, if you see it half empty, then you tend to see life one way, versus if you see it half full, then you tend to see life in a different way. And ultimately, with perception, you the most important part to remember is that we have a filter in our brains that do not allow all the information to sift through. We only see what we want to see, and we only, same with listening, we only hear, we only listen to what is relevant and important, and not everything that is being pointed out to you. Finally, how will you think about when you ask, for example, someone about who do you find attractive? Who do you think that looks handsome or pretty? Well, it depends who you ask, right? Because we say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And even how you live your life, based on what kind of background you have, then that's how you tend to see life in the future. Have you heard, for example, how sometimes we say that people who grew up wealthy, not everyone, of course, but oftentimes we say that a lot of times these individuals might take things for granted in life and not appreciate what they have. Versus if you grew up really, really poor, then what do? You tend to sometimes we even say that you tend to gather things and you keep them because you never had anything before, and you tend to want to keep everything that comes your way because you don't know when you will have this available, right? So with perception, and in this lecture, it's also important to learn about three different concepts, and those are the self-concept, the self-esteem, and the self-image. The self-concept is the self-concept is basically who you think you are. How will you describe yourself? How do you define yourself? And it's different from the self-esteem because the self-esteem has to do with evaluations of self-worth. Do you like what you see? And it's different from the self-image because the self-image is how you view yourself in any particular circumstance or situation, say, during the day. The self-concept is technically defined as the relatively stable set of perceptions that you hold of yourself. Relatively stable set of perceptions that you hold of yourself. And it's different from the self-esteem because the self-esteem is, do you like who you think you are? And that is different from the self-image because on the self-image, those are the views that you have about yourself, but they can change during the day. So you are a certain person in the morning when you're a student, you transform into a different person when you go to work because you take on different roles, and then you get home in the evening and you become a different person because now you take a different role, and we all go through that. So ideally, or technically speaking, the differences are that in the self-concept, the relatively stable set of perceptions that you hold of yourself is who you think you are, and that does not change dramatically during the day. You go through stages in life, and yes, you change the view of who you think you are, but not drastically from one moment to the next. We go through stages in life, right? Then the self-esteem, do you like who you think you are? And the self-image are the views that you have of yourself or how you present yourself throughout the day, so that those change somewhat from time to time during the day.